Hi, this is Randy. Welcome to my channel. Glad to have you here today. Hope all is going well with you and yours. I want to ask you if you would hit the subscribe button at the bottom right hand side of the channel and give it a thumbs up. That will help me get them to push my videos out and I can reach a lot more people for the Lord. Today we're going to be talking about something that's a little different, and we're going to talk about minimum wage and poverty, all right? And my working life is almost all behind me now. I worked for 40 years and minimum and past that. But my father taught me a lot. My father was born in 1895. And when he was in his early working life, there was no taxes taken out of your paycheck. And so he lived in a different time and era, and he shared with me his thoughts on this. So we're going to talk about minimum wage and poverty. In Proverbs 22, 1 and 2, it says, I give a good name is to be more desired than great wealth. A good name's worth more than money. You can't buy a reputation, all right? Favor is better than silver and gold. The rich and the poor have a common bond. The Lord is the maker of them all. I know we live in a society where people are jealous of rich people and they think the rich people are terrible and all this. There's always been rich, there's always been poor. Yeah, there's the middle class, upper middle class, lower middle class, white collar workers, blue collar workers. It's been that way. It's going to be that way. That's just the way it is. So you need to realize that minimum wage and poverty we're talking about now, but a good reputation is worth a whole lot more than money. We should not be jealous of what other people have and what they've worked for and what they've gained through their own honest work. Proverbs 6 and 34 says, For jealousy enrages a man, and he will not be spared in the day of vengeance. We all are God's children. And we all should love one another, and that includes the rich people. You shouldn't hate people just because they're rich, nor should they hate people because they're poor. What our politicians say, or whatever they tell us, Christians don't get their help from politicians in Washington, D.C. They get their help from God. God is the supplier of your needs. He said, I will supply all your needs according to the riches and glory. All right, he didn't tell us to give us all of our wants. We'd have the best car, the best home, the best everything. That's what some people preach, the old prosperity gospel, but it don't line up to the Word of God. So we need to realize that you cannot legislate people out of poverty. Now, I know this may upset some people, but I'm just telling you the fact that you cannot legislate people out of poverty, all right? Our country tried to legislate people to good morality. And they made alcohol a law that you couldn't drink it, and during Prohibition, and all it did was made all the people rich, and more people drank than they did before they passed the law. You can't legislate people to be good people. You cannot legislate people out of poverty, all right? Matthew 26 and 11, For you will always have the poor with you. I didn't say this. Jesus said that. But you do not always have me. He said you always have the poor with you. No matter what we do, we're going to have poor people. All right? The U.S. has spent more than $15 trillion since 1964 to try to end poverty and wipe out poverty. Today we have the same percentage of poor people that we had in 1964. The same percentage. It hasn't changed. The needle hasn't moved. Why? Because you cannot legislate people out of poverty. And a lot of their programs were, we'll give you this, we'll give you this, we'll give you this. In other words, we're going to give you a fish instead of teaching you how to fish. All right? So we should not forget the poor, and we should help them, but we need to realize we'll never wipe out poverty because the Lord said the poor will always be with you. You cannot legislate people out of poverty. Now, when I got out of school in the early 70s, minimum wage was $1.60 an hour. $1.60 an hour, all right? after my dad died November 17th on a Wednesday. His funeral was Saturday on November the 20th. And Monday morning on the 22nd, I was turned 18 years old. And I had to take on the man's role in the family and try to help my mother. And we struggled very bad financially after my dad was gone. My father told me minimum wage is a starter job where you start out. Mostly kids in high school, college, and retired people, they work at McDonald's or Burger King or places like that, even Walmart and stuff, part-time jobs. And it's to give them money so they can drive a car and get around, pay their car insurance, and help them buy their own clothes and teach them some responsibility while they're going to college or while they're finishing up high school or whatever. All right? A minimum wage job is not meant to be a lifetime job. That's an entry level job. Now, I know you're going to say to me, you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, let me tell you something. I owned my own business for 4 years. I pastored for 22 years, and we had to have a budget at the church. We had to be able to pay the bills and pay everybody and all that. Plus, the 25 years I was in the car business, I went to management training with Chrysler for one management class was on screening, hiring, and firing people. The other one was on managing your time and your employees' time. Another one was on used car department, how to run it, how to make it go smooth. I could go on and on. I've had extensive training. I've hired numerous people over the years and scanned people and trained them for the jobs. And I want you to know that minimum wage is not meant to be a lifetime job. That's a starting point. If you want to do better in life and you're not wanting to go to college for whatever reason, there's trade schools. Many of them are only 9 months to a year, and you can learn how to be a plumber or a welder, a body shop guy, mechanic, how to program computers and repair computers, you know, how to weld, how to be a truck driver. It goes on and on. Sheet and metal worker and heating and air conditioning. You can get into those things real quick and start making money. Some will pay you as an apprentice. You get paid while you're going to the trade school. A lot of people ought to look at that option. What happens? Well, at the end of 9 months or a year, you don't owe $50,000 worth of debt to the school or $100,000. And you're taking 4 to 6 years to get through college and spend all that money, and then you come out and people that didn't go to college are making more money than you made. So I'm not knocking college. It's important. People ought to go. If you're able to go, get a degree. Even if it's just an associate's degree for 2 years at junior college, that's worth a lot to you over the life of your working life. Open up a lot of doors for you. But we also need to realize you can't legislate people out of poverty. Let's take California, for example. They raised their minimum wage to $20 an hour. All right? I'm just telling you what the news reports, okay? When they did that, a lot of people at the restaurants got laid off. Why? Because they couldn't afford to pay those people that kind of money. So maybe a shift had 20 people. They have 15 now. Tell the people you just got to do the extra work. You got to get done. We can't afford to pay 20 people a shift. So 5 people per shift, 3 a day, 15 people lost their jobs. Now, they said on the news about a month ago, there are places in California where when you pull up to McDonald's, the reason they use that, McDonald's the biggest one out of everybody in the United States. When you pull into McDonald's, the average for a Big Whopper meal, not a Big Whopper, they don't serve that. I'm talking about a Big Mac meal. If you order the meal, large drink, fry, and burger, it's $25 to $27. So if you've got 3 teenage kids and you and your wife, and you're headed out of town on a Friday night, and you say, well, just grab something to eat at McDonald's. We'll go through the drive-thru, and we got 200 miles to get to Grandma's and want to have a fun weekend. And they pull in there, and the kids are teenagers, and they want either a quarter pounder meal or a Big Mac meal or something like that. If they all order that, you're still looking at $125 plus tax. You're looking at about $130 to go through McDonald's. You know, why? because $20 an hour. If they keep raising it and keep raising it, pretty soon you won't be able to go through a drive-through restaurant and buy anything. You can't afford it. You can try to legislate people out of poverty and give them what you think they ought to be paid, but that may cost a lot of people their jobs, and young people, especially, and elderly, that want to just supplement their income when they're going to college or finishing high school, or they're retired and they need a little extra money because of medical and this and that. They're the people that get hurt because a lot of them get laid off because they can't afford to pay that kind of money. Plus, people are not going to go to eat fast food every day for lunch when it costs them $20 or $25 for a burger meal. All right? Now, here where I live at, it runs around $11 or $12, but that's still a lot higher. Back in just when COVID just started, you could buy a quarter pounder meal for $7.70 with tax, or $7.40. It was something like that. And now it's over $11 for the same meal, $4 higher. And if you have a wife and 3 kids, all right, now all of a sudden you're looking at 20 extra bucks to get the same food you was getting 2 or 3 years ago. So let me tell you something. You cannot legislate people out of poverty. You could pass a law tomorrow and say nobody will make less than $50 an hour. All right? If a company can't pay it, they're going to lay people off. They're only going to be able to have a certain size workforce, because if they keep raising their prices of their product, keep raising their price of product, what does people start doing? They stop buying your product. They can't afford it. And there are a lot of people in this day and age using their charge cards to supplement putting food on the table and paying the utility bills, because it's been so much higher, 25% higher than it was just 4 years ago. And so some items are 50% higher. And so I buy the groceries for us, 85% of the time, 75, 85% of the time. So I'm well aware of prices at the store. I buy a lot of our groceries. And when I buy those groceries, I can tell you what the price was on it and what it is today, and it's a lot more money. So what do me and my wife do? We started buying less good cuts of meat. We buy other cuts of meat. We eat a lot of chicken, a lot of pork, because beef is just so. We buy ground beef, but we don't buy steaks and beef roast. We buy a pork roast. Why? Because of the money. It's just ridiculous. So you need to realize, if you have a family, it's hard in this day and age to make a living, but you cannot legislate people out of poverty. So what do people do when they go out to eat? Maybe they used to eat out 2 or 3 times a week. Now, I've had friends, I'm talking about real people, they only eat out once a week now because they can't afford it, because it costs so much money. Many places can't afford to make entry-level jobs anymore, because the entry-level jobs are real expensive. My first job, I got $2 an hour working in a factory, and minimum wage was $1.60. After 30 days, they raised me to $2.25, and another 30 days they raised me to $2.50, and that's where you stopped at. I was making $2.50 an hour versus $1.60 minimum wage. That's what I was being paid. And if I wanted more, I had to work my way up there, up the ladder, because that was an entry-level position I was working, and it paid $2 an hour for the first month. And then eventually, after 2 or 3 months, I got up to $2.50 an hour. Well, what are you saying? I'm saying that you start out at the bottom, you work hard, and then they move you up here. And then you work even harder, and they move you up here, and they keep moving you up. That entry-level job, the entry-level position, people handing burgers out the window and running a French fry fryer, you can't pay $20 or $25 an hour to people like that, unless you charge so much for your consumer goods, so when people come in, the meals are so expensive they can't buy them. So your volume goes down, so you have to reduce overhead. Unfortunately, real businesses and real people can't run their places like the federal government does. Oh, we owe $33 trillion. Well, we'll just give $150 billion to this country and $250 billion to this country, and we'll use $1 billion for the illegal aliens. We'll take it out of the fund that we pay for people that have hurricanes and tornadoes. We'll strip that fund and give it away. They're spending money they don't have. All right? And the country keeps going further in debt, further in debt, further in debt, and they just keep spending money they don't have. Unfortunately, real business people, real people who live in a real world cannot do that. You can't print more money. You can't keep borrowing, borrowing, and borrowing. You have to bring in more than you're paying out. If you're bringing in less than what you're paying out, you're living above your means. So we need to do what we're supposed to do. The places can't afford to pay people that kind of wage. So legislating people out of poverty is not going to work. My father preached a sermon in the 60s. What year, I don't know. But in the 60s, my dad preached a sermon, and this is what he said. It always stuck in my mind. He said, if we gave everyone in the United States, every family, $100,000 tax-free, in 1 year, we would have people still coming to the church saying, I can't pay my electric bill, I don't have enough food to eat, and all that. Why? Because they don't know how to manage their money, and they don't know how to operate with money because they've never had it, and therefore they waste it, and next thing you know, they're broke. And so we need to realize 70% of everybody wins the lottery. I'm talking about the big money. All file bankruptcy within 5 years. Most of them are broke within 7 years. 70 to 75% of them are. Why? Because they can't say no to anybody. They keep giving money out, money out, money out. After a while, there's no more money to give out. It's all gone. So we need to realize that we need to learn how to manage our money and realize that the government cannot legislate people out of poverty. They've spent $15 trillion. We still have the same poverty level we had back in the 60s. It's no different, all right? So it's not worked. Should we end programs like food stamps? Absolutely not. Should we end programs that helps children to have hot lunches at school? Absolutely not. They need that food and they need that help. And they have a WIC program in Missouri. And I don't know what they call it in other states, but they give the mother who's pregnant or has a baby, they give them baby formula, they give them baby food, they give them eggs, milk, cereal, all sorts of things to help the children. I am all for helping the children, helping poor people. If you say I'm not, you're wrong. I'm not against helping poor people. But we need to realize that Jesus said the poor will always be with us, and there are people that don't know how to manage their money, and there are people that just don't do a good job of being a good steward. They don't give God anything, and they want everything for themselves, and they don't know how to manage their money. I went to a church one time. They asked me, they said, Randy, are you going to be preaching in that? Well, they call me Pastor May. Even though I don't pastor no more, they call me Pastor May. I fill in a lot of churches when a preacher's sick or going on vacation or whatever. I fill in their pulpit. So they said, would you teach a class? We've got the literature on helping people manage their money and how to put a budget together and how a checking account works and all this. So I said, okay, I'll do it. And I did. Well, I had numerous people come up to me. Boy, I really want to come to that class, but it's on Monday night, and Monday Night Football's on, and I can't miss Monday Night Football. I said, you can't manage your money. Well, no, you're broke all the time. Yeah, you're struggling. Yeah. Well, what's more important, Monday Night Football or putting food on your table? So I switched the class to Tuesday night. Then I had other people tell me, well, I'd like to come, I should come, but I just can't make it on Tuesday night and all that. And when I was done teaching this class, the people that stayed from it from start to finish were real happy. They thanked me. They had notes. They had notebooks. We gave them materials. And a lot of them come to me a year, 2 years later. Oh, man, I tell you, I'm glad I took that class. And they tell me how good things have went. They now have savings. They're further out of debt. They're doing good and all that. But I had numerous people come up to me and said, well, I wish I could have come to that class. I'm really struggling financially, but I just couldn't come, and they were asking the church to help them all the time. Why? Because they wouldn't help themselves. That's why the poor will always be with you. They won't. There are people that just will not, and I hate to say this, but let me get everybody mad and get it over with. One thing that always perturbed me as a pastor and helping people was if people buy cigarettes, alcohol, marijuana, and they spend their money on all sorts of stuff, and then they want to come and ask the church to pay their electric bill, or ask the church to come and give them food and help them out financially. They just, it really perturbed me when people did that, and that's not right. They should manage their money better and not use it for things like that. The poor make poor choices sometimes. Some choose the alcohol and the cigarettes and whatever over putting food on their table. And so we need to realize that we need to get past that. We try to train people like that class. The pastor of the church asked me to teach that class, but many people that needed it, he even told me, these 4 or 5 families here, they all need that real bad. Why aren't they coming? I said, I've talked to every one of them. They said it's not convenient. They can't come on that night. They got all sorts of excuses. He goes, well, I'd like to see some of them learn some things. I said, I know. We're trying to teach people how to fish then instead of giving them a fish. But some people like receiving a fish and they don't want to have to work for it. There are people that way. I'm sorry. This does not mean that we should not help the poor. We should, but they're always going to be with us. Proverbs 19 and 17 says, one who is gracious to the poor man lends to the Lord, and he will repay him for his goods, for his deeds. God will repay you if you help the poor and you're gracious to the poor. The Lord will not let that go unnoticed, and he will help you. God wants you to help poor people. When you help the poor, it's like you're putting your help with the Lord. You're giving it to the Lord by helping poor people. You cannot legislate people out of poverty. You can raise the minimum wage and keep raising it and keep raising it, but there'll always be poor people, and all the raising of that is going to do is hurt people that need certain products, and it's going to get so expensive they just do without it. They give it up. I used to have pizza night, but now pizza's got so expensive I just can't afford it. They don't do it. People will back off. They'll only go so far. And so legislating people out of poverty, raising the minimum wage, I'm not against giving a raise of minimum wage. I think there ought to be a minimum wage. But it shouldn't be to the point we have to realize, let me drive this home one more time. We have to realize that minimum wage is meant for entry-level positions and positions that are entry-level jobs. I had never heard anyone in my entire life come to me and say, Pastor, I'm glad when I graduated high school, I wanted to go to work at McDonald's or Burger King or whatever, and I went to work there, and I've been there 25 years, and I just love it, and I'm going to make a career out of it and stay there. There are people that have management positions at McDonald's, shift leaders, crew leaders, and they make pretty good money, but the rest of the staff doesn't. And so trying to make an entry-level job a lifetime job, I never once thought when I got out of high school that I was going to take an entry-level job at $1.60 an hour minimum wage, and then I was going to stay there the rest of my life. I was taught that first job is a springboard to work and find out what work's all about and work hard and learn, and then move up from there. And so I did. My first job, I worked 7 months there, got established, found out what it was like when I was out of school. I started applying for other jobs, and I got a job with another company that had something the first company didn't have. They had health insurance, they had a pension fund, they had sick days. My other company didn't have that. My other company stopped you at 2 weeks vacation. You never get more than 2 weeks. If you worked there 40 years, you still only got 2 weeks. But my new company I went to, they gave 1 week after 1 year, 2 weeks after 3 years, 3 weeks at 10 years, 4 weeks at 20 years. And when you got to 25, you got 5. You couldn't get no more than that. That'd be 5 weeks a year. So it had a lot better. So I moved up. All right. I got out of my entry-level job and moved into something else. That's what you want to do. And you try to legislate people out of poverty who should be going to trade school and should become something else so they can make more money. All right. That's not a job that you want to have the rest of your life. when you help the poor, it's like you're helping the Lord. But we need to realize entry-level jobs are entry-level jobs. They're not meant to be lifetime jobs and then force the employer to pay more than they can afford to pay, so they have to start laying people off, and people quit buying their products because it gets too expensive. All right? So I hope this helped you a little bit. I'm not against the poor. The Bible tells us we're supposed to help them. The Bible says we're supposed to love them, and we're supposed to reach out and help them, and I believe in that. But I also believe that we need to accept responsibility for our own actions. And if you want more than a minimum wage job, and if you want more money than handing burgers out a window, then you are running a cash register, then you need to go to trade school or college. Or if you've graduated high school and you're smart and you got moxie, go to a company, a manufacturing company or whatever, and apply there and try to get on at a place like I did that has benefits and has better pay and all that. Not only did they have better, they started me out at $2.50 an hour for the first month, $2.75 for the third month, and $3 for the next month. And that's where I stayed and worked my way up from there. So I went from making $2 an hour to $3.50 an hour with benefits and no benefits over here. You start out and you work your way up. It's not good to try to legislate people out of poverty, because it will never happen. It will never, ever happen, unfortunately. I love you. God loves you. If you have a chance, would you please subscribe to the channel, bottom right-hand side of the screen. Give me a thumbs up. That's the only way I'm going to get my videos pushed out to people, is if you help me out. I want to thank everybody that has. All the people that subscribe, all the people that make comments, all the people that sent me emails. I appreciate it. I love you. I get back to you as quick as I can. And I really appreciate it. I want to thank you for your time. This time, till next time, old Rev May is going to sign off, and you have a wonderful day, and God love you.